Welcome to Spiritual Psychology. My name is Renee Lavallee McKenna, and I am thrilled to introduce you to Robyn Miller Brecker, who's a former Oprah executive who has broken out on her own with Karen Lenser, and they have started Seeking Center, which is a platform and a podcast bringing together the best of spirituality and wellness in one place. And after years of working with the world's spiritual and thought leaders, Robyn had an experience and the night a medium changed her life. And it's a story we talked about. And when I was a guest on their podcast at Seeking Center, and I really feel like it's an important story for people to hear about this deep and transformative experience. So Robyn, welcome. So great to have you here.
Thank you, Renee. I'm so glad to be here. And I love our soul connection.
It's beautiful.
And it is. And I love telling the story because, because I spent so many years meeting incredible thought leaders and spiritual teachers. And I learned so much from them. And obviously from Oprah, that is foundational for me. And while we had mediums come through our doors in the first 10 years that I was working for Oprah, in 2010, there was something that happened that really elevated my belief, I would say, in all that you cannot see. Yeah. And it was so profound and transformative that his really now, I believe, from that experience is why I'm doing what I'm doing now, 14 years later.
Wow.
So what ended up happening is I like to go back a little before that night. I'm going to go back a few months. So that happened in March of 2010. And a few months, about 6 to 8 weeks prior, I had been sitting home and I was flipping through People magazine with my daughter sitting on my lap. And at the time she was about almost 2 years old. And I'm looking through the magazine and I see this woman who looks like she could be a friend of mine. And her name is Rebecca Rosen. She's a spiritual medium. And I'm reading her story. She has a book coming out. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, she's a spiritual medium. I could see talking to her. I wonder if my dad would come through. Now, my father passed away suddenly when I was 12 years old. I never had the opportunity to have a proper goodbye with him. He passed away suddenly of a heart attack. So for me, obviously, that was when the first time my life changed overnight, right? I had to grow up very quickly after that. And I didn't believe necessarily in an afterlife at that point. I just thought when you died, you died.
Right.
And so so for me, I just never had the inkling to want to talk to a medium prior to seeing this article. And I didn't say anything to anybody after reading it. I just very, very profoundly thought about it. And I would say felt it in my bones, like what that would be like. How could that be really magical? Could I really reconnect with my father? And one of my roles at the time I had helped start Oprah.com. And at the time I was also at that moment, I had stepped back from all of those roles and responsibilities of helping to run it because I had my daughter. And so one of the things that I was doing for Oprah.com and for Oprah was meeting different talent and contributors that could be featured on Oprah.com and then potentially end up being on the show or in the magazine, and kind of that ecosystem within the Harpo world. And so all of a sudden, a couple of weeks later, I received a call from a publicist telling me about a woman that was coming through town that was a spiritual medium. And then I received another call from an agent separately about this woman that was coming through town. And would I meet with her? Well, fast forward another few weeks, and this woman comes to Harpo to meet me, and it's Rebecca Rosen. And I mean, you can't make that stuff up.
No, I
and
just got to chill. Yeah.
You know, I'm sitting in this conference room with her. She has no idea that my father passed away however many years ago. And we're just talking about what she does and how she does it and how she has that, how she came into that ability. And she invites me to a large group reading that she's doing that night. That was about a half hour from the city. So I go along with a few of my colleagues to this reading, and there's no assigned seating. So for anyone who's never been to anything like that, this particular event, there was no assigned seating. You just walked in, found it was about a 200-person theater. And, you know, I have to say I was a little nervous. And here I am, I've done through so many different, you know, things, but I don't know what it was. I was nervous. I didn't know what to expect. And I can tell you that what I felt as soon as Rebecca came in, she's the cutest little spunky, vibrant woman. And she comes out and she does this meditation for everybody before she gets going. And I'll never forget what I felt as she did that meditation. It was like all of a sudden, all of this energy that I maybe had never been aware of, I don't know, came into that theater. I felt it. I really felt a significant shift in whatever happened right when she did that and welcomed any spirit that wanted to come through. And somewhere probably halfway through that evening, she walked over around my area and she said, I have somebody here named Bob Robert. And honestly, my friends knew my dad's name, but I didn't want to just jump up. I wanted to see if there's anyone else who had a Bob Robert, kind of a common name. And then she said, he's talking about the three women. He's talking about the three women, and it's me, my sister, and my mom. And he says, and so he had a heart attack. And meanwhile, my friend just hits me. She's like, Robyn, no one else is raising their hand. So I raised my hand and she looked at me. And when she's in that moment, and now knowing, because I can do this myself, I can understand, like it wasn't even recognizing. She wasn't even like, oh, I know you. I mean, it did come to that. She's like, oh my God, it's you. But she was just in her flow. And so then she just was going, and it was about a 5-minute reading, but everything she said was so specific and hit me right in my heart. And it turned out that there were other people around me who I didn't know, all had lost their fathers too. Wow. And she would go on to say that happens. Like she said at the end of it, if you didn't get a reading within this, but yet you were sitting around someone who had a very similar story to you, it's all on purpose. And that's like spirit sitting you in those positions. And for me, what she did validated so much I didn't even know, and gave me so much belief and hope and all of these other things that I didn't know I needed. And one of the major things that came through that night was that my dad knew what I was doing. My dad knew he knew what was going on. He knew I had gotten married. He knew I had a daughter. He knew that I had worked hard, and I was trying to give back in this world, and all I wanted then was more. so I left there, and I thought, oh my goodness, like I need to like fully sit down with this woman and really just explore this. And so but for that night, I went from understanding that that I basically lost my fear of death because I realized we never really die. And that's what that night did so much for me. But when it comes down to it, I don't fear death. And I now, 14 years later, have a very strong connection with my father on the other side. So that really just was the beginning. And I think it opened me up to so much that we can't see, and to really talk about energy, because I don't think it's something, and even in all my days and prior to that, all my Oprah days and all my days after that, I think that prior to it, I never really understood, number one, the connection we can have with spirit and our own spirit, not just other spirits, like our own spirit, and what energy actually means, and that we all have, we can pick up on other people's energy, we carry our own energy, and it's fluid, and we can take responsibility for that. And all of that came out of that night.
Such a beautiful story.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so I'm curious what happened next in your interactions with Rebecca.
Oh yeah. So after that, that was March, I was able to book a session with her in person. She lives in Colorado, and she was still doing, I think at this time, she doesn't do many privates. She does more small group readings now, but at the time she was still doing private sessions. So my sister and I flew out to Colorado and had an in-person reading with her. And it was, again, transformative. I mean, I had already transformed because now I believed. And now I was so excited for my sister to experience it, because she, not to say she was skeptical, but she just didn't know what to expect.
Right.
And so until you actually experience it yourself and you feel that magic and that energy, it's hard to convince anybody of that, that you have to really experience it. And so my sister and I experienced that together. I got to experience her for the first time, connecting with our father. And it was such a strong connection. I remember Rebecca thinking, not understanding my dad at that time had passed away like 20 something years ago. I mean, it was almost 30 years. She thought he had passed away like a few years. She's like, this is such a strong connection. And, she kept saying he has one foot in this world and one foot in the other. And the specifics in what she was validating for my sister and I, and all that we'd been through, and what we'd been doing in those last 20 something years that he had witnessed and been a part of. And then also she was able to be intuitive in the sense of giving us some guidance for our future. And I think that was the other part too, is that there were certain questions, and my sister and I still talk about to this day how she was able to name who my sister didn't get married until, I would say, 7 or 8 years later. But she didn't meet her husband until far after. And yet she had named, she's like, you're going to meet this man named Scott. He's someone that you can marry. Like, it was like things like that. Like,
Right.
To this day, we're like, oh my God, she actually said that. And you're going to have this many kids, and it may not be exactly in the way that you think it's going to be, but she was seeing all of that. And so that it gave both of us so much hope in general and validation. And it opened up, I know for me, I would say more than my sister, this yearning for figuring out, can I do this myself? Like, this is something that I could do. And so that seed was planted then. And then I wouldn't really start to really channel things myself until 8 years later. So that was a while later for me. However, in the meantime, I would see other mediums. I knew it was a resource that I could use, and that I was interested in. And so, and just that idea that it also helped that, along with my work with Eckhart Tolle, which had been a few years earlier. It was like presence and awareness became very key in my life for those next 8 years. Until then, I had my own, I would say, another spiritual type of awakening for me, where then I was able to get in tune with my own abilities, which we all have. And I think we all kind of unlock these things at different points in our lives.
So you have to tell us about the second level.
Yes. My next level of awakening really came, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, when you don't know what else to do.
Yep.
I felt like my soul was dying in my everyday, and I couldn't understand it because I had so much going for me. I mean, I have like the best partner, who's my husband, and I love my daughter. Like, those things are so fulfilling in my life. And yet I also know I have this other purpose as well. And it was always fulfilled in what I was doing career-wise through my work with Oprah. And when that work started to change, just because the company started to change and our responsibilities started to change, it's like slowly my soul started to die because it wasn't being fulfilled in the way it used to. But I didn't know what else to do. And I didn't really know who to talk to about that, because I didn't want to sound ungrateful. And what else? My life was pretty good. So why should I complain? And so it was a hard thing to admit.
Yeah.
And the only person I could really talk to about it was my husband and my sister. And I thought, well, maybe I can talk to my dad. So I booked a session with my very good friend, who's also a spiritual medium. Her name's Lisa Nitskin. And she's become a very good friend. But at the time, we were just friends. Like, but I very much believed in the way that she was able to read. So I was excited. I booked a session with her on April 25th of 2018. So that was that was significant, and that's why I always remember that date, and I remind her of it all the time. And that same week, several days prior, a friend of mine had a party at their house, and they surprised everyone by having a psychic there.
Oh, wow.
And we didn't know that there was going to be this psychic there, and everybody had 15 minutes with this woman. And so I walked in, and she asked what I wanted to focus on. I said career. She used tarot as her resource, and she laid out the cards, and then she started channeling for me. And she said, you do something that's been very significant, and it has brought you a lot of fulfillment, but you're going to do something that is completely in line with your soul's purpose for being here, but it's not going to happen overnight. So this is 2018. She's like, it's not going to happen till after 2020. She's like, so I'm not telling you to quit your job today, but I want you to understand you're going to have the opportunity to start changing what you're doing day to day so that you can be completely fulfilled. And she started naming, I feel like you're going to have shows or a book or something. Like, she didn't know, and she didn't know what I did.
Right.
By the way. And she said all these things, and I thought, well, that's exciting, and it gives me some hope. But there wasn't any like clarification, but it definitely sounded really in line with what I might want to do. And then when I met with my friend Lisa, she was like, when I walked in, she said, what are you working on? I said, I don't know. That's why I'm here. So by the end of that reading, though, she ended up saying, and I didn't say anything. She said, almost exactly what this woman had said, but in much greater detail because I had more time.
Right.
She said exactly what that psychic said. She said, you're going to be done with what you're doing right now by 2019. And what you're really going to do is going to take off after 2020. So nothing's happening overnight. So again, this is 2018. She's like, it's not going to happen. And she said, and you know, you're a medium and an intuitive, and you need to do something with that. Like you need to do something, and that's going to lead to all these other things. And she started naming things too. You're going to do shows and a book and all this other stuff.
Mhm.
She's like, but part of it is that this is part of who you are and what you're supposed to do in the world. So I left there like, wow, 2 people in 1 week said the same thing. Start to pay attention, start to listen. And she said, listen, whether you want to take I offer intuitive classes and mediumship classes, or you want to take someone else's, whatever it is, do it, like do it. And I decided to do it. And so I had made that decision sometime that week and to do it over the summer. And because my daughter was going away, I knew I would have some extra time in addition to work. And so I made that commitment. And 2 weeks later, hadn't started those classes yet. However, I ended up meeting a shaman who also reiterated everything that I had just heard, really, and offered to help me in a different way, and offered her services in terms of really helping me connect with my soul. And we worked together for several months, and I still work with her. And she very much, but again, it was all the same themes and was all the same wording and phrases. And these people didn't know each other. And so I knew this was on purpose. Like then I met an astrologer and I met another medium, all within this very short time frame, that all told me the same thing. They didn't know each other. And what I ended up coming to was, in addition to working on my own intuitive and mediumship abilities starting that summer, which I was shocked that I had, which we all have, but I was shocked that I was able to connect so easily. I was also able to come up with what I really, and get aligned with what I really wanted to do in the world, which was to connect others with all this magic and make it and translate it in a way that they could understand, because we're not taught that. And I want to take the woo-woo out of all of this, because it's actually supernatural. Right. It's supernatural. Yes. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And it's supernatural. So it's all those things. It really is. And so my goal is to make spirituality and wellness just mainstream and common for everyone, because we can all tap into this.
Yes.
And so really from there, I came up with this, number one, because I come from the TV and digital world, programming, so shows and ways that I could help people be educated, entertained, and inspired. So I came up with that. I met Karen at that time. We were working on a project together for Oprah and Discovery Networks. And while that project didn't go forward, we connected at the end of it. And so all of that happened, I think, because I was in this place of allowing and open to all of it. And it was the right time. It was the right time for me. And so my goal is to have others experience what I did, where you know without a shadow of a doubt, this is the direction I'm supposed to go. And sometimes you need to hear it from others, and then you could start to hear it within yourself. And so, yeah, that was my spiritual summer of 2018. And here we are in 2024. And I'm living now in alignment with what I know I should be doing to help others and fulfill my own purpose too.
Right. And so how did you start to work with your own mediumship and channeling abilities, and how do you use that in your work now?
Yeah. So that's my friend Lisa, and I know that there's many other classes and mentors that you can work with. The way that she worked and helped to teach me and others, and still does, is in our very first class together, she introduced us to all of the clairs, which actually I had learned from Rebecca Rosen, because she did a whole article on that for Oprah.com years ago, and it's in her book as well. And I remember reading that, and then when I was in this class, putting it really into practice, what Lisa was able to help us do was start to identify our own clairs. So there's clairaudience, clairsentience, claircognizance, clairvoyance, and then clairgustance. Is that the way you say it?
I don't know.
Okay. So which is where like you can taste things
Oh,
without,
okay.
like, so the clairs, like, they help you, and in quotes, see things, right? So clairvoyance is, in my mind's eye, I can see images, just like most of us can
Right.
see things through our mind's eye. I can hear things in my mind's eye. I can feel them, right? Claircognizance. So I'm not, clairgustance is not a major one for me. So, which is where you can, but like some people can taste things.
Right.
So anyway, so that first class, she has us do exercises to see what are our strongest clairs. And then by the end of that class, she just pairs you up with a random person, and she gives you a time, like time limit. I don't know if it was 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And you just concentrated on that other person's energy. And you just started to write down whatever came to mind. And in that first class, I was paired with a woman I'd never met before, didn't know anything about her. And I just concentrated on her energy. I allowed myself to like get quiet and really concentrate on her. And I wrote down all these things that seemed completely random to me. And after, she did the same thing. And afterwards, we were reading them back, and like almost every single one, like I got names, I got visualizations of her house, of her car. I ended up getting a visualization of her son that passed away, how he passed away, what his problems were. And I was like, what the hell? Like, I was just like, what the hell? And so to me, that's how quickly that you can tap into it. And then it becomes a practice, because then I think for me, and it becomes and this is for, I think, any person who's helping to translate spirit for someone, if it's not just like literally saying everything you're hearing, but even when you're doing that, it's coming through you. So you have to start to understand your own. It's like coming up with your own dictionary.
Right.
What do certain symbols mean? What do certain words mean? Colors, those kinds of things. And so that becomes a practice. But that's how I started to come into this ability. And so now the way that I use it in my work is there's several different ways. When someone comes to me for spiritual coaching, or like say a spiritual BFF session, what I'm able to do even before I meet them is I do what I did with that woman in that day, except that I don't need to be, and as Renee, I'm sure, has talked about this, you don't need to be in the same room, because energy can travel no matter what. We can feel, as long, for me, I can concentrate on someone's name and I can start to get a feeling about them. And sometimes seeing a picture helps me even more. But even just the name, I start to get an energy if I focus on it, and I set the intention to receive messages for that person. And then I'll get a download for them even before we end up meeting. And I'll have that. I'll start off a lot of times with that and say, this is what I received. I know I don't know exactly why you're coming to talk to me. but this is what I received. And then when somebody, the other part of why I do what I do is I made it a mission after I left my job which was by 2019, to meet somebody every week in this world to start to vet them. Because I think there's, just like in any profession, there's people that are better at what they do than others. And I wanted to make sure I was meeting, if I was going to recommend people to others so they could experience what I experienced in that time frame in 2018, I wanted to make sure they were authentic.
Right.
So and one of the things that I wanted to be able to do is recommend others to people, because I know I can't do it all. That's not like what I'm here for. I'm here to help intuit, guide people in the best way I can, and then lead them to these experiences so that they themselves can see and feel that magic and receive the guidance and energetic healing for themselves that then helps them move on. That's what I love being a part of. So I do that kind of exercise, and I work with, and so my point is, when you meet authentic people, you can tell them things. They're not going to use that. It's like, right. Some people are so afraid to share anything, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so for me, once I do this, I ask someone, tell me why are you at a crossroads in your life? What is leading you to want to discover something else? And so we have that conversation. And then while we're in that session, I'm receiving messages for them, and I'm receiving guidance to help them. So maybe you need to talk to Renee, or you need to talk to my friend Lisa. And I'll usually come up with kind of I'm able to lay it out. I see it in my mind. Like, this is kind of, if you're really serious about this, first talk to Renee, then talk to Lisa, then get a reading with this person. And maybe you don't need to do all those things, but at least start with the one, because you're going to start to receive messages and guidance that are going to help you move forward, so that you can, with clarity, move forward and feel validated in these next steps, and your life will begin to change. So that's how I use it. I mean, I use intuition now every day, all day. I'm always receiving messages, but in my work, that is how I work with people. So.
And you're, I'm assuming, using that with Seeking Center is this next level.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I am. And so for Seeking Center, what I am so grateful for is that we're creating this platform and destination that brings together all of these different spiritual practitioners in one place that we have ourselves experienced. We know they're authentic. We're bringing together all these wellness products that we know are good for you. And we're putting that in one place. And then what we're also doing is we're creating programming around all of this so that you can really see and feel, I would say feel emotionally how these things can change your life. So one of our key shows will be around the similar experience that I had, taking somebody at a crossroads in their life and showcasing the different experiences that were for that person,
right,
that changes their life, and you see the transformation that they go through. And then on our podcast, which we love to do, which is every week, we talk to somebody who either has experienced these different modalities or is a spiritual teacher or practitioner. And they share, because everybody has their own unique way of using these abilities, even if you may both be a spiritual medium or an energetic practitioner or a shaman. Like, there's so many different, I believe everybody ends up using their own abilities and creating their own unique way in which they are using them in the world. So and every practitioner has their own unbelievable seeker journey too. Like your journey just blew our minds. So, and how you're using those gifts now, and not gifts, those abilities in the world to teach others, to help them heal themselves, all of it, we could just, I mean, really, Karen and I, we could do this all day, every day. That's our goal. So our goal is to create a whole channel around this, so that it is 24/7, so that it is your spiritual companion in your daily life. That's the goal, and create the community around it too, because these experiences are magical, and they change your life. And and you want to talk about them. Like, can you believe this happened? Or you're maybe in a place where you're confused. Like, why is this happening? Why don't I feel the magic? And there's so much support out there from other seekers, as well as practitioners and teachers who want to help.
Absolutely. I mean, my experience with a lot of people who come to me is that they're having these things happen spontaneously for them. And what a lot of people are suffering is because they're actually tapping into the lower vibrations or the trauma or the suffering of other people, and they can feel it, and they're out in the street, and they see things and feel things, and they're in the supermarket, and they feel really invaded or overrun by that, and then they take psych meds, or they drink at night to put themselves to sleep, and they don't know how to manage this. Again, like you said, the very natural opening. We're all connected, and we don't, on the non-physical level, which has not been recognized by scientific materialism. And the church also suppressed people's individual connection, their own mystical, direct connection with the divine, with the non-physical world, so that it could run through. Not all of that was nefarious, but certainly a lot of it is. So there's no training, there's not talked about it. Am I crazy? What's wrong with me? And a lot of my work is helping to ground people in those higher realms that you were already like awesomely connected with, right? Probably because of all of the lifetimes of work you did before you got here, right?
Probably.
Right. Not a coincidence, right? And so, and teaching people how to really accept and make room for this. And it's paradigm shifting, like it was for you, even though you'd worked in this realm for a long time as a professional, to actually have the experience. Because it is, the thing about the non-physical world is it's not theoretical. In fact, talking about it can be problematic because it's running through our rational brain. It's all about the experience.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
And teaching people how to have that in a healthy way, and to be able to navigate it like you're describing so beautifully, in a way that's helpful to yourself and to others, rather than a thing that they want to turn down and just get away from it because
yes. And I love what you said about other, when you're out and about and you feel other people's energy. And I do, like, one of my goals, as you said, is I just want other people to understand this, because I understood it even as a kid, which I talk about with my daughter all the time and have for years now. When I would go to the movies as a kid, I kind of freak out, because there was almost too much energy in one.
I don't go to the movies.
Right? Like, I feel that, and she feels that, and I don't like going to the movies. I really,
I don't go to the movies. I don't. It's so way,
and like concerts and things, it takes a lot for me. I can't. It's like some concerts I can go to, but I don't know if that's the music and the frequency of the music or what. But like, there's something to this point of feeling other people's energy, and no one talks about that.
No.
And how to protect yourself. And that's the other part, is like teaching people you can go in these environments and put almost, your own little bubble around yourself to protect yourself. And so anyway, it's all these little things. And so I think if you're someone who is a sensitive, they call it like what, a highly sensitive, an HSP. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah.
It's like just understanding that is a thing is
Right.
important. You know what I mean?
And then from my perspective, it's actually a superpower. I mean, unfortunately, the overculture is about desensitizing people. And, I want to do a little bit more about this movie experience that a lot of us who are highly sensitive experience. And what I think is going on is because in fact, someone just asked me last week if I want to go to the movies. And I said, I know right now there's nothing in major theaters that I want to see because it's all violence, murder, crime, and horror on some level. Even kids' movies have torture scenes in them in Disney and Pixar. Sorry. And so, like that resonance, now I can sit with anything, literally. As a practitioner, when I'm in my space and I'm grounded, I've sat with horrific things.
Yes.
And I can sit with it because there's an opportunity to be helpful. People are there to grow and change. And, I'm a trauma therapist, basically, in helping people to resolve unresolved emotional issues from the past so they can be more present and more grounded and more empowered. And when I'm in the movies, because we energetically attune naturally as humans, I'm in a movie where they're shooting bad motives, violence, fear, horror, way too much stress, for me. I don't want to experience that. I then have to be in the movies trying to defend myself from this energy that maybe other people enjoy. I think a lot of it is, unfortunately, that for many of us, we've been numbed out and we aren't actually grounded in our own life, in our own suffering. And we want to avoid that. And so we go to the movies and we have this pseudo experience that kind of allows us to feel like we're experiencing the emotional trajectory of life. But it's not our own. And for me, the more I have my own grounding in my own life and my own emotional experience, I don't want to take in that. I mean, that's what I say. You got to pay me to sit with that stuff. I'm not paying you to go sit with that stuff. But it's pathologized, actually, to be sensitive like that. I don't want to be desensitized to murder and war and all that. That's like,
I so agree. Yes, that's such a great point. Yeah, I mean, I'm not, my family knows, like, it takes a lot for me to get to the movies. Like, I don't go very often at all.
Unless so if it's worth it. So like, I have to say one of my last favorite movies was Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh, I love that movie.
Brilliant. It's brilliant, right? So for me, and I think this is kind of a different topic, but we're both content creators in our own ways, right? And so, and historically, story was a narrative about healing and wisdom and helpfulness and guidance, the Greek mythology, and certainly these things that might be, just purely for entertainment. But story is a very, very powerful medium, to misuse the word, to translate human experience that we can learn from and integrate into ourselves, right? Yeah. But we've lost wisdom, which is really, I think it's one of our connections, is that we both want to feel responsibility to bring this wisdom teaching and the wisdom energy back in to the culture.
Right.
That has been lost and misguided. There's not a lot of hope, actually, if you watch mainstream TV. And we both know there's a tremendous amount of hope.
There is. And listen, there's times when I acknowledge that I want to be distracted, and I'm ready for that. And I'm excited. Like, there are those times, but I think I'm conscious about that. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right. Absolutely.
I there's a consciousness to that. And there are good shows and there are good movies, but there's an energy that you have, like when you are super sensitive, you have, and in a theater that it's amplified so much. I think that's for me where the energy is too much.
Well, I had the great privilege of doing a 3-week retreat with the Zen Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who was amazing. Yeah, it was a really life-changing experience in 1997 in Vermont. And he spoke, so the whole retreat was about mindfulness and being present and about the interconnectedness and the interbeing of all things. And it was about heart opening as well. And we need to be safe to be able to open our hearts. And he talked a lot about, we talked about the food we take in, the relationships that we have, the language that we have of our own self. And he introduced a concept that was, again, life-changing for me, was that the information that we take in, whether it's visually through TV or movies or our phones or auditorily, or whether we read it, is like food. And to think about, lots of people pay attention to the food they eat, right? But then they have a TV blaring in the background, or they have some terrible radio station on that they're not, just unconsciously. And we're actually taking that in. That's food for our energy system, for our spirit, for our emotions, for our mind. And so what do I want to feed myself?
Ooh, that is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's really why Karen and I want to create a whole Seeking Center channel, because we want it to be good for you. Right.
Nutritious. Right.
That's a great way of putting it.
No, but it's true. And I think what it's done for me is that lots of times I actually will try to defend myself if I don't want to take stuff in, because if I'm unconscious about it, there's all kinds of stuff coming into me that I don't actually want. And I want to be the healthy caregiver of my own system, right? I remember when my son learned how to read, and he said, "Mom, I can't not read now." Like, you see all the, we have all these words around us all the time.
Yes.
And so how can we be stewards of our own energy, of our own mind, in choosing what we want to read rather than having it chosen for us by things that might not have our best interest in mind? They might have selfish motives of profit or just getting your attention rather than wanting to care for you. And that's what we're doing, because we want to care for people.
We do.
We do.
Well, because once you feel it,
you
want others to feel it too. I actually think about that with Oprah. She always says that, she read A Color Purple, and then she wanted to share it with the world. And she did that with anything, right? Like, that was when her favorite things, that it came from her wanting to share all of her favorite things. Right. And that's how I know that's how I feel. And I think that's how you feel when it comes to this work. We just want to share it, and all that we continue to learn. We want to share it with others, because we know that there's the possibility for you to feel better, and also to connect with who you really are, because we live in a world with all of these distractions and there's ways for you to not be connected to who you are. And so I think that's why we're here, is to help others really come back to that center, which is why we call our podcast and our platform and our channel will be Seeking Center, because that's what we want to help people, is come back to that center, and also create a center for that. So,
and it goes both. I mean, that's, it really speaks to this. We are all connected on the ultimate level. There is no death. There is no birth. In some ways, there is a continuation of the one through the many. And so, but it is, whether it happens through reaching out and connecting with others first, and then you find yourself, or whether you go into yourself first and then connect with others, both are imperative, I think, in order to have some are more oriented one way or another. whether we seek our center or whether we seek the center, right? And I just love the brilliance of what you're doing and
Thank you.
of all you bring into the world, Robyn. It's
Thank
really
you.
a privilege to know you. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so grateful that we are connected. And I love how, like, and I know you feel this way. I am always in awe of how different souls come into my world and vice versa, right? Because it is energy.
Yeah.
Like there is this divine connection and divine timing, right? Like
Yes.
this is the right time that we meet up in this lifetime so that we can help others together. Like it is that time. And we had to go through our journeys to get here and share these beliefs and want to put this in a way that people can better understand in today's society so that we can all be our best selves and live the purpose and the journey that we came here to fulfill.
Yes, not somebody else's journey. And so if you feel disconnected, then really coming into yourself or seeing who comes across your path. Again, it can be both directions, like to sit with yourself and just make room for how you're really feeling. Like you described what I call being a prisoner of a privileged life, having been there myself, right? Like, why am I unhappy and I have all these things? But because I'm out of alignment, and we can trust that, right? And or if people cross our path, you talked about things happening over and over again. If I hear the same thing or read the same thing or see the same thing twice, it's a sign for me that I need to pay attention. Right. And we're in this conversational experience with the life force that really does have our back and want us to participate because, again, we're a part of it, right? And so, right, how do we have that conversation with our own deeper or higher self, and how do we open to the messages or this conversation that's happening, whether it's directly through other people or nature or our work or wherever these things come from, so that we can be in that life flow that is our soul's journey. Yeah.
Oh, so good.
So good.
I love this.
Robyn, blessings on all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And yeah, for anyone listening, check out Seeking Center, wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out theseekingcenter.com for our platform. You can find content, experience, products, all of it, and find out more about Karen and I. So thank you, Renee, for having me today and for asking such good questions and allowing me to tell my story. I appreciate it.
It's a great story. It really is. Maybe we'll see it on the big screen someday. I don't know.
Yes, and hopefully it will all be in good energy.
Yeah, it is. You got nothing but good energy. So, Robyn, thank you so much. And I think we'll talk again.
I think so too. Yes. Thank you.